Hey everybody, we're Diamonds Too Loyal, back again with another video. Today we're reacting to another Anna horror stories, the worst cases of family alienation ever, not Chris Watts. Let's get into it, guys.
We can see the area where they are investigating at this point. The sheriff's office saying simply that they are investigating a suspicious death.
There's something you want to tell us. I can see it in your eyes, I can see it in your body language, and just the way you act.
I sat there for a half hour.
He was sleeping?
Yeah, standing over him. And then I went between putting the gun up to his head and pulling it back down and up.
Do you have a pillow up too? Or?
Yeah, just the gun. The gun was... I'm not sure if I meant to pull the trigger or if it just...
I'm not sure if I meant to pull the trigger. Bruh, you know, come on now. You just feeling real guilty, so now your mind is messing with you. But you knew at the moment you was shitty about something and you pulled the trigger. You meant to pull. Come on now. Like, what the heck?
It just...
Family life is supposed to be full of joy, of bonding together as one and looking out for each other at all times. But sometimes family life can also be very stressful, and it's at times like these that we may not know those closest to us as well as we really think. Today we start with the case of Grant Amato, whose fixation with a webcam model became so bad that he would kill anyone who tried to stop his obsession, including his own flesh and blood. Then we move on to Nick Browning, the teenager who turned a gun on his own family and then partied without remorse the very next day. Finally, we take a look at Damian Rezikowski, the monster father who snapped when he found out that his wife was having an affair and went on to massacre 5 innocent lives. Let's take a look at those times when family members turn on their own in the worst cases of family annihilation ever.
I just don't see how, kids could do this to their family, parents, or whatever. And then, like, how a father could do it to his kids and wife. You know what I'm saying? Like, dang. Grant Amato.
On January 25th, 2019, concerned coworkers had called the police about their missing coworker, Cody Amato. Police attended Cody's home address, only to find no one was answering the door. The attending police checked the outside of the house but saw no signs of activity. Suspicious, as there were several people who lived at the property, officers forced their way inside. Inside, Cody Amato, 31, Margaret Amato, 61, and Chad Amato, 59, had all been brutally executed, each of them with fatal bullet wounds to the head. But there was one member of the family missing, Grant Amato. When police tried to call him, his phone had been disconnected. Concerned, they put out a bulletin for him, and he was found when his car was spotted at a hotel. When he was brought in for questioning, the interrogation revealed how Grant Amato would turn on...
He was staying at a hotel thinking they wouldn't find him.
...his own family and become a triple murderer.
And I'm asking you if you can please, pretty please, send me one of your videos.
The Amato family lived in Chuluota, Florida, and on the surface appeared to be a perfect family. Father Chad and Mother Margaret lived with their sons, Chad and Grant, in a large house with plenty of land. The oldest child, Jason, was living out of the area at the time. The Amatos were close-knit, attending football games together and enjoying family time. But by 2018, there were signs that trouble lay ahead for them. Youngest sibling Grant had been following the same profession in nursing as his
what was wrong with him? Like, was he jealous of his brother?
Brother Cody. They both had aspirations to become nurse anesthetists, but where Cody succeeded, Grant failed. Things took a turn for the worst.
He was
when
jealous.
Grant was then fired from his nursing job for stealing medication, claiming he was administering extra doses to help patients. As well as losing his job, he now had police...
He was probably trying to kill patients.
...charges against him. His life became increasingly isolated. He would spend most of his time at his computer in his room, portraying himself as a wealthy bachelor to friends online, when the reality of this unemployed 29-year-old was much different. He lost weight and appeared pale in appearance. He would stay up through the night, And it was around this time that he began his obsession with a webcam model that would end up tearing his family apart. Sylvia Venestulava was known online as Sylvie and was a model on an adult webcam service. In order to watch her perform, Grant would have to buy tokens, and they came at a high price. For around 1 hour of viewing, he would pay $600. But it wasn't just
$600 just to watch this lady in only for an hour. Oh my gosh.
the webcam he was
Stupid
spending money
stuff
on,
people
as
do.
he also
I never do
showered
that.
Sylvie with gifts. Before long, he would begin to lose touch with reality, as he now saw this webcam model he had never met in person as his very own girlfriend. If you have asked yourself where he managed to find all of the money to fund his infatuation,
Right.
well, it certainly wasn't his own. And before long, his family had a huge debt on their hands that would start a downward spiral.
He was probably stealing money from his mom, dad, brother.
To tragedy. Grant had spent a shocking $200,000 on Sylvie in just 3 months. He had tried to persuade everyone he was using the money to build his profile as a gamer on Twitch. He had been
Wow.
lying to his family, and things were spiraling out of control. But his family loved him, and they continued to support him. That support even went as far as Chad remortgaging the house to cover the debt to include the legal fees Grant was facing for stealing medication. Having not learned from his past run-in with the law and the consequences he was still facing, he took out fraudulent loans in his father's name. His father didn't inform anyone about this, as he didn't want his son to face any more legal troubles.
Wow.
Grant's unwavering devotion to a
So
woman
his
he had
family still loved and cared about him, even though he was doing all this. I'm not saying that because he was doing all this, they should stop loving him. But like, dang, your family was still there for you, trying to help you out, and then you go and murder them, bro.
never met in person, and someone who did not return the feelings of love had almost ruined an entire family. His father was even quoted as saying he was going to have to work a few more years longer than I thought I'd have to before he could retire. Many of us would only appreciate a family so devoted to their own that they
Right.
stick with them through times like this. Things looked to be improving by December of 2018 as the charges against him over the stolen medicine were dropped, and his brother Cody paid Grant's expenses for a vacation to Japan. But as they returned from the trip, Chad would once again put pressure on his son to get a job and change his ways. Only the argument would come to
So
a
his thing was is he probably didn't like being told that he had to get a job and change.
head, and Grant would walk out of the family home just a week before Christmas. He went to stay with his aunt, but it wouldn't be long before she noticed some unusual activity with her finances. Donna
That's what her
Amato
stuff
lived less
too?
than 50 miles away in Apoca. She took Grant in, but before long, his late nights were the least of her problems, as she soon noticed some irregularities with her finances. Grant had been using her bank account to continue his interactions with Sylvie. Grant's father begged her not to press charges and promised he would pay back the money he had
Dude,
stolen. Then
your son needs to learn some kind of have some kind of consequences. And he talking about some don't press charges, man. After so many times of giving him chances, I press charges.
he broke down and revealed what had been happening. Just 3 days before Christmas 2018, the family finally confronted Grant, and this time they were determined to get him the help that he needed. He enrolled in a voluntary rehabilitation center, but dropped out 2 weeks into the 2-month program. The family could take no more, and Chad invited Grant for dinner. While there, he imposed a set of rules on Grant that he would either stick to or be forced to leave the family home. He was given a homemade contract that was later found by his older brother Jason. He had to seek help, return to work, but more upsetting for Grant, his phone was disconnected and he would have no access to the internet, meaning he would no longer be able to see and talk to Sylvie.
I would call it like an ultimatum. Some options that were given to Grant to choose between after leaving the facility.
Jason was asked if there was any reference to Sylvie in the contract.
It states that it informed Grant that they had reached out to this woman to let them know, or to let her know some of the things that Grant had been saying weren't 100% true.
With his entire world on the brink of being snatched away, Grant could take no more and finally snapped. In order to gain
Yeah, when you took his little girlfriend away and told his girlfriend the truth. Oh, he really got mad. Big mad.
entry, the officers on the scene forced a door open. Cody's body was found first by the police. He had been shot under his eye. Just a few feet away from his body lay a handgun. Next, they came across Chad, dead by 2 shots to the head. He had holstered a gun on his hip. Finally, slumped over his work desk was Margaret, shot in the head once. It appeared to be a murder-suicide, but the investigation would reveal an even more sinister end to the 3 members of the Amato family. With Grant being the only member of the house who was not present, police needed to speak to him and brought him in for questioning. While there, he told detectives his father was an angry man who was always on his back about getting a job. He also made some alarming claims.
He had apparently found out, and then
Unhappy.
Right, and one of the stipulations was that he told at the dinner was, if you speak to this woman again, you're out of the house. He had told me that basically if that happens, that if I ever step back onto it,
You spending everybody money just to talk to this lady that you've never seen in person.
property, that he would kill me.
Police didn't buy his story that he was out the night of the murders, or that he no longer had the guns he had bought off of Cody, and began to apply the pressure.
Did you leave the house with your brother Cody looking like that? Or did you leave the house with your father looking like that? Or your mother?
Throughout the investigation and the trial, Grant maintained his innocence.
The evidence will show that the relation between Mr. Amato and his parents and brother will show a clear lack of motive.
But ultimately, the case against Grant was strong and revealed evidence that conflicted Grant's story, and even shed questions on the scene of the murder, including the gun Chad was handling.
The gun itself was placed inside of the holster, and it was in this position on his body, which was strange because we learned from his son Jason that he was right-handed.
Ironically, for someone who loved being online, it would be his digital footprint that brought.
So, Jason put the gun in his pocket or in his gun holder. You know, because if he was right-handed, it wouldn't be faced that way.
Him down. Grant had shot his mother and father first, and then waited over 4 hours for his brother to come home and shot him too. Other evidence came from a neighbor who heard the gunshot, and a failed attempt to clear his phone and destroy potential evidence. Not only that, he had wiped the blood off of his dead father's thumb in order to open and access his phone and bank accounts. It did not take long for the verdict to be decided.
Well, Matt and Lisa, the jury took about 2 hours to make their decision, avoiding death. And I was in the courtroom and I watched as one of those jurors stared at Grant Amato for his reaction when his sentence was read aloud. The defense says he remained stoic, and then he thanked him for sparing his life.
Grant Amato became obsessed to such a point that his own family, who had stuck by him through all the lies, had given him an ultimatum. In the end, this sick and twisted killer lost more than just a woman he loved. He lost his right to freedom and will spend his life behind bars with no possibility of parole. If this case made you feel horrified, just wait till you hear what the next guy did.
Nick Browning.
This is Nick Browning, seen here with his 2 younger brothers, Gregory and Benjamin. They lived in a town called Cockeyesville in Maryland with their parents John and Tamara. His dad was a successful attorney, while his mom stayed at home to look after the family. They picked up trash, they attended church, and they were known around town for their kindness and willingness to help just about anyone. Described as an all-American family, this picture of happiness was shattered in February 2008 when 911 received a distressing call about a tragic scene found by 15-year-old Nick after he arrived home from a night at a friend's house. Inside, the entire family, except for Nick, had been brutally murdered at some point during the night. As the only survivor, he was naturally questioned by the police. According to his friends, Nick was a great student with honors, a successful athlete, and had plenty of friends. But things just didn't seem to add up with the detectives. And
he really murdered his family, huh?
Reports of disturbing conversations Nick had with friends led to an investigation that revealed what really happened the night of this quadruple murder, and the answers will shock you.
Months before the murder, he had told children on the bus, 16-year-old, 15-year-olds, that he was tired of his father telling him what to do, and he was going to kill his father, and he was going to kill his brother so he didn't have to share the inheritance.
As friends of Nick arrived at his house, instead of finding the party they were expecting, they found the house surrounded by emergency services. Each victim had been shot. John was found on the couch downstairs.
What makes them think they can do this and like the police isn't going to find them, or like they're not going to get caught? They're just going to kill their family and be set free with all this money.
While Tamara and the boys were found on the first floor. His two brothers were only 11 and 13 at the time, their lives tragically cut short. Nick quickly blamed the deaths on a burglary gone wrong, which police didn't see any immediate evidence to back up. Needing answers, they brought Nick in for questioning.
Tell me what's happened the last day and a half. What was going on and last night? I guess you can start tomorrow. Yesterday afternoon.
Came in from school, 2:45, then thought about going to the basketball game, but then ended up
Delaney
basketball game. Thought about going there.
Okay.
Then we decided to skip that for a bunch of reasons. Then we went to Ryan Fingal's house.
Okay.
They were just hanging out there. We went outside for a little bit, you know.
So were you doing at Ryan's house?
Yeah, Ryan.
According to Nick, he had been out with friends the night that his family were killed. And friends corroborated this, as they had returned to the house with him before he walked into the grisly crime scene. But he had been displaying behavior during interrogation that indicated he wasn't being completely honest. His reactions to the questions didn't produce the kind of emotional response you'd expect from someone in this situation.
And so I didn't want to take the car out, because the lights were on, you know, so worried. And so I went in the car and started yelling, they'll go to bed in a half hour and the lights will be off. So I was sitting there, and I fall asleep. Then I get a call from Alex around, I think, 5 in the morning.
Okay.
And then it wakes me up, and then I slept in the car, and the lights are still on in the house.
Okay.
And it doesn't make sense now, but, you know.
During the questioning, he speaks about the moment he found them in an almost casual way, as if talking about going about his normal day.
Then I opened the garage door, I walk inside.
How did you open the garage door? How do you do that?
That's the code.
Is there, okay, for the outdoor code, right?
The keypad.
Garage door opens or something? Okay.
And so I walked inside, and then the door was unlocked, which was weird because one of my parents locked the door.
Which door? The door in the
door into the garage.
Kitchen?
Into the kitchen.
Okay, from the garage to the kitchen.
That was locked, so I figured it would be locked, but it wasn't. So I walked in, and I saw my father on the couch.
Detectives later discovered that Nick had spoken to the other children on the school bus about killing his parents, and had done so on many occasions. But his friends always thought he was joking and never took his claims seriously.
When did
His friends really thought he was joking about that, dude?
see your parents last, or talk to your parents? When did you see your parents last, I should ask?
They dropped me off at Ryan Fingal's house.
Nick claimed his father was an abusive drunk, which was later shown to be another lie. He also said he had to finish the rest of the family off, as he had already started the killing. He even suggested he did it to claim his inheritance, and if his brothers weren't around as well, then he would get to keep
it. Would have been better off, like, say if, and I ain't saying this is right, but like, say if, you know, like, I feel like people be doing the most just to get themselves in more trouble. But if he would have just killed the father and then made that seem like it was some type of murder, and when his mom get home, just act like, you know, he ain't knew about it, and somebody came in and hurt the dad, whatever, you know, that's how you be smart about it. But I ain't saying it's right. I'm just saying, like, you know, the way how they do things, when they kill one family member, then they kill all the family members. That makes them look more like sus. You know what I'm saying? Like, they just do things to put them more in the hole instead of, like, you know,
it all for himself.
Before leaving, he staged the scene to look like a burglary. He threw the gun and a spare magazine into some bushes at the end of his street, returned to his friend's house, played video games, and went shopping at the mall.
After he had finished, he returned to his friends, where he acted as if nothing had happened until returning to the house on Saturday, February 9th. What police did know is that Nick lied about having the keys to the gun cabinet, which was found underneath his very own mattress. He lied about his movements and contradicted himself frequently during questioning. The state's attorney later accused Nick of premeditating this murder for months. It took the detectives 6 hours to get the confession, thanks to some clever interrogation techniques and lots of patience.
16-year-old Nick Browning Jr. wept as a prosecutor read chilling details of how he murdered his parents and his two younger brothers as they slept.
During the trial, some of his relatives asked the judge not to sentence him to life without parole, as they believed he would see the error of his ways and become rehabilitated back into normal life. This intervention led to Nick Browning receiving 4 life sentences, meaning this cold-hearted killer could roam the streets once again. In prison, he joined a pen pal club, but some of the things he has said during his confinement don't really show he has any remorse for what he has done. And so we may never know whether those tears in court were for the victims of his heartless—
So soon as he get out, he could still be the same person no matter how old he is. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, even though he a kid now, that could still stick with him, and he could, like, he not acting like he care about his family.
cruelty or for his own impending incarceration. If you thought this was sickening, wait for the next man.
I looked through the doorway into the lounge and saw a baby on the floor, and I thought, I went, whoa, what's wrong with the baby?
As the incident unfolded, more and more casualties come to light. And that was particularly distressing.
Finally, we come to perhaps one of the sickest and most evil killers yet.
Damien, I don't know how to pronounce it.
Damien Rizikawi looked like your average family man, working hard to make a life for his wife, Isabella, and their daughter, Kinga, 5 and 2-year-old son, Casper. They had a house on the island of Jersey. Although Jersey has ties with the United Kingdom, it isn't officially part of it. August 2011 marked 7 years since there had been a murder inquiry on the island, but that would soon change as this peaceful, idyllic island was about to experience its most gruesome crime yet, and under the most tragic of circumstances. In just 15 short minutes, Damien took the lives of 5 people and left 1 critically injured in a moment of rage that sent shockwaves around the world.
We can only imagine the grief of the families who lost their loved ones in such brutal circumstances.
Together for over 6 years, Damien and Isabella's relationship had begun to show signs of strain, and some of Damien's friends had noticed a change in his behavior. What many did know is around a month before the murders, Damien had attempted suicide. The reason? He was struggling to cope with a confession from his wife, in which she revealed she had been involved with someone else in a 2-month affair. They took a trip back home to Poland in an effort to bond, but Damien drove—
See, a lot of men can't take that, you know, but soon as they cheat and a woman find out, they woman, you know, either learn to work through it or they just leave them. You know, a lot of men, they either want to sit over here and kill themselves, you know, or say that they want to hurt themselves, or you know, just, you know, they just, you know, they weaker than women. They weak. They real weak.
Drove the family home in an exhausting 23-hour journey. On Sunday, August 14th, 2011, the family arrived home from their trip. A perfect summer's day meant many families were enjoying a barbecue, and Damien and his family were no exception. Isabella invited her best friend Marta and her 5-year-old daughter for the afternoon to join the family, including her father, Merrick, in what was planned to be a fun, relaxed afternoon together. When Isabella returned, she was horrified to find Damien had left their children alone in the house, with no one watching over them. When he returned, he would not explain where he had been, and what followed sparked a series of events that would leave an entire island mourning the loss of some of their residents.
Initially, it was difficult to realize what was actually happening.
All appeared to be well. The barbecue was done, and everyone was inside enjoying time together. Damien had been drinking during the day, and after a stressful few months, he snapped. Grabbing 2 kitchen knives, he first turned on his father-in-law, who was watching television as Damien lunged at him and stabbed him. He survived and tried to crawl to help the others as Damien went into the lounge. Then, he turned on his own son and heartlessly stabbed him 16 times before turning his attention to Kinga and Julia.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Are you serious? Oh. This is so sad, man.
Who both had 13 wounds on their bodies. It is possible Marta watched the entire tragedy before Damien turned the knife on her. Finally, he hunted down his final victim.
He watched the whole thing and then he turned on her. Oh my gosh, dude.
and his reason for the massacre. He attacked Isabella, who even with 3 fatal stab wounds managed to escape the flat and run out into the street. A neighbor called her father of Jersey Fire and Rescue to alert him of the chaos unfolding.
I was on my way to my daughter's flat because we'd just moved her into La Villa Rothsay, which is a flat alongside the Victoria Crescent.
By the time he and other first responders arrived, the massacre was over. Isabella stabbed in the middle of the street in front of terrified witnesses who tried but failed to apprehend the perpetrator. Isabella's father, Merrick, was still alive when they arrived, but despite all their efforts, he did not survive.
There were almost small pockets of incidents within a big incident.
And the monster who did this? Damien tried to stab himself several times, including his wrists, but was eventually caught. From the 6 people inside the house on that fatal Sunday afternoon, only 1 survived, and that was the deranged killer himself. Witness statements and forensics collected over 2 days established Damien as the killer, but his defense team pleaded diminished responsibility due to depression and other factors over recent events. He had psychotic symptoms that caused murderous outbursts. To the disgust of many, he avoided the murder charge, but was found guilty of manslaughter.
Damien Shashovsky will be sentenced in a few weeks' time. The man who's twice tried to take his own life is now facing the consequences of those terrible minutes on a summer afternoon.
He will spend 30 years behind bars, a sentence some say isn't punishment enough.
Nah, that need to be life in prison. Come on now, 30 years behind bars.
This case is notable for being the first of its kind, where the story broke on social media before it hit the news itself. Speculation was rife, and the story exploded, causing many to make their own conclusions of what really happened and exactly what moment caused a family man to turn into a stone-cold killer. 6 years after Jersey's most tragic event, Damien took his own life in prison. These 3 cases all show the dangers that come with family feuds, but we may never learn exactly what in their brains caused them to perform such sickening acts of primal violence against their very own.
Man, if you guys want me to react to more of these videos, like this video, subscribe to my channel,